Is Top Gun Maverick a remake of Star Wars Episode 4? Let's take a look. Top Gun Maverick is one of the most popular films of 2022. Seeing it on the big screen was a lot of fun, with plenty of military action and, dare I say it, the movie has heart. I've recommended it to everyone who will listen. The film ends with a speed run down a narrow canyon in an airstrike on a heavily defended base. As I enjoyed the action, there was something about the scene that felt familiar. Something like that. Did anyone else see this, or am I just going crazy? I'm old enough to have seen Star Wars in the theater back in 1977. The second time I saw it, my parents took me and I was excited to share the movie with them. Wait, not this version. Or that one. Or that one. That's the one. Way back when it was just called Star Wars. I'm guessing you've seen the movie and know how it ends, though the original theatrical release is almost impossible to find. 45 years later, are we seeing an updated version of the story? To find out, I dug up my old copy of the Star Wars tie-in novel, written by George Lucas himself. Well, actually, I bought a new copy so I don't tear up the old one even more than it already is. So let's review. Star Wars is a modern retelling of the classic hero's journey from ancient Greek mythology. It's the story of a young and naive pilot named Luke Skywalker, who gets pulled into a conflict that is more challenging than he could ever imagine. At first, he's reluctant to take on the challenge, partly because he thinks his mentor is a crazy old man. Despite his doubts, Luke begins his training. Along the way, he makes new friends, like in a bar when he meets an arrogant but lovable scoundrel named Han Solo. Throughout the training and the final battle, the mentor teaches the student what he needs, and they even gain a mutual respect. In the end, the hero proves himself under stress. They win the battle and even a friendship that is set up to last a lifetime. Now let's focus on the rebel attack on the Death Star. The following quotes were written by George Lucas himself. They are presented in the order they were published, though I did have to trim down the text to match the two storylines. Chapter 11. As the ground chief jumped clear, Luke commenced the final checkout of all instruments. It slowly occurred to him what he and the others were about to attempt. Something crackled in his helmet. In response, he touched a small lever. The ship began to roll forward, slowly but with increasing speed. Chapter 12. Leia Organa sat silently before the huge screen on which Yavin and its moons were displayed. Dodonna and several other field commanders of the Alliance stood behind her, their eyes also intent on the screens. "Our ships are away," a commander behind him declared. 4 silvery starships burst into view. Keeping a tight formation, they exploded through humid air to vanish in seconds into the morning cloud cover far above. Blue Leader's thoughts traveled back over the years, over the uncountable injustices, the multitude of evils incurred by an increasingly corrupt and indifferent imperial government, represented by the single bloated feat of engineering they were approaching now. "This is it, boys," he said to the mic. "Accelerate to attack velocity." Grim determination showed on Luke's expression as he flipped several switches above his head and began adjusting his computer targeting readout. From the approaching swarm, 2 squads of fighters broke clear. The X-Wing ships dove directly for the bulge of the space station. Within the station, they were completely unprepared for an offensive response consisting of tiny snub ships. Soldiers scrambled to man enormous defensive weapons emplacements. "This is Blue 5, Luke announced to his mic as he nosedived his ship in a radical attempt to confuse any electronic predictors below. The gray surface of the battle station streaked past his ports. "I'm going in." "I'm right behind you, Blue 5, a voice recognizable as Biggs sounded in his ears. Energy bolts and sunburst beams continued to create a chromatic maze in the space above the station as the rebel fighters crisscrossed back and forth over its surface, firing at whatever looked like a decent target. Inside, troopers, mechanics, and equipment were blown in all directions by explosions as the effects of the blast traveled back down various conduits and cables. The atmosphere of the war room back up in the temple was one of nervous expectancy. Near a far corner of the mass of flickering lights, a technician leaned a little closer to his own readouts before speaking into the pickup suspended near his mouth. Squad leaders, attention! Squad leaders, attention! We've picked up a new set of signals from the other side of the station. Enemy fighters coming your way. Luke received the report at the same time as everyone else. He began hunting the sky for the predicted Imperial craft, his gaze dropping to his instrumentation. My scope's negative. I don't see anything. Maintain visual scanning, Blue Leader directed. With all this energy flying, they'll be on top of you before your scope can pick them up. The horizon flip-flopped ahead of Blue Leader as he commenced his approach to the station surface. Blue 10, Blue 12, stay back until we spot those fighters, then cover me. All three X-Wings reached the surface, leveled off, then arced into the trench. No defensive fire greeted him as he raced toward the distant target. This is it, Blue Leader announced, trying to locate the attack from above that had to be coming. Keep your eyes open for those fighters. All short and long-range scopes are blank, Blue 10 reported tensely. Too much interference. Blue 5, can you see them from where you are? Luke's attention was riveted to the surface of the station. No sign of... Wait! 3 rapidly moving points of light caught his eye. There they are, coming in at .35. Darth Vader was already setting his own fire control as he dropped like a stone toward the trench. Close up formation. I'll take them myself. Blue Leader was amazed at how calm he was. Almost there, he whispered. Then the 2 circles matched, turned red, and the steady buzzing sounded in his helmet. Torpedoes away! Torpedoes away! Both fighters pulled up sharply, just clearing the end of the trench as several explosions billowed in their wake. It's a hit! We've done it! Blue 10 shouted hysterically. Blue 5, this is Blue Leader. Move into position. Luke, start your attack run. The 3 ships peeled off and plunged toward the trench sector. On Yavin 4, Leia Organa rose from her chair and nervously began pacing the room. Can they go in? She finally asked Dodonna. The general replied with gentle resolve. They must. Luke studied his instruments. Wedge, Biggs, we're going in, he told his wingmen. We'll go in at full speed. We'll stay far enough back to cover you, Biggs declared. At that speed, will you be able to pull out in time? Are you kidding? It'll be just like Beggar's Canyon back home. I'm right with you, boss, noted Wedge, emphasizing the title for the first time. Let's go. The trailing TIE fighters also increased their speed. I'm on the leader, Vader informed his soldiers. Take the other one. All 3 TIE fighters continued chasing the remaining X-Wings down the trench. It was only a matter of moments before one of them caught the bobbing fighter with a crippling burst. Except now there were only 2 Imperials pursuing. The third had become an expanding cylinder of debris, bits and pieces of which slammed into the walls of the canyon. Only when the freighter fully eclipsed the sun forward did the new threat become visible. It was a Corellian transport, and it was diving directly at the trench. Screaming uselessly into his pickup, the wingman fluttered toward the near trench wall. He never touched it, his ship erupting in flames before contact. Darth Vader's fighter began spinning helplessly. The tiny ship continued spinning in the opposite direction from the destroyed wingman, out into the endless reaches of deep space. You're all clear now, kid, a familiar voice informed him. Now blow this thing so we can all go home. Luke looked up through the canopy and smiled, but his smile faded as he turned back to the targeting visor. There was a tickling inside his head. Luke, trust me, the tickle requested. He hesitated, but only briefly this time, then shoved the targeting screen aside. With the confidence of a blind man in familiar surroundings, Luke moved a thumb over several controls, then touched one. Soon after, a concerned voice filled the cockpit from the open speakers. Base 1 to Blue 5, your targeting device is switched off. What's wrong? Nothing, Luke murmured, barely audible. Nothing. He blinked and cleared his eyes. Had he been asleep? Looking around, he saw that he was out of the trench and shooting back into open space. A glance at the control board indicated that he had released his remaining torpedoes, though he couldn't remember touching the firing stud. Still, he must have. You did it! You did it! Wedge was shouting over and over. I think they went right in. Several X-Wings, Y-Wings, and one battered-looking freighter accelerated away from the battle station, racing toward the distant curve of Yavin. Behind them, small flashes of facing light marked the receding station. Without warning, something appeared, brighter than the glowing gas giant, brighter than its far-off sun. No one dared to look directly at it. Space filled temporarily with trillions of microscopic metal fragments, propelled past the retreating ships by the liberating energy of a small artificial sun. The collapsed residue of the battle station would continue to consume itself for several days, forming for that brief span of time the most impressive tombstone in this corner of the cosmos. Chapter 13. A cheerful, gleeful throng of technicians, mechanics, and other inhabitants of the Alliance headquarters swarmed around each fighter as it touched down and taxied into the temple hangar. Several of the other surviving pilots had already vacated their ships and were waiting to greet Luke. I knew you'd come back, Luke was shouting. I just knew it. I wouldn't have been nothing but dust if you hadn't sailed in like that, Han. Solo had lost none of his smug self-assurance. Well, I couldn't very well let a flying farm boy go up against that station all by himself. As they laughed, a lithe figure, robes flowing, rushed up to Luke in a very unsenatorial fashion. You did it, Luke! You did it! Leia was shouting. Suddenly awed by the adulation of the crowd, Luke turned away. For a second he thought he heard something faintly, like a gratified sigh. A relaxing of muscles a crazy old man had once performed in moments of pleasure. The end. And there you go. The comparison is not perfect, but it's close enough. Actually, the trench runs and bomb runs lined up pretty nicely, though the dogfights mixed up the timelines a little bit. Either way, I hope you enjoyed it. May the Force be with you.